Let's get strapping down then and get it run up and see what kind of power my Clubsport produces. Hello guys and welcome to this Volks Wizard video, which once again is a special video because today we're going to finally find out how much power and torque my Mk8 Golf GTI Clubsport is actually producing by strapping it to the dyno here at Racingline in Milton Keynes. Racingline is one of the most respected Volkswagen Group tuners in the world, and as if that wasn't enough, we're also going to dyno their brand new Mk8 Golf R demo car, which is currently in a standard state of tune, to find out if the Golf R's power to weight ratio advantage on paper over the Clubsport still applies when using dyno figures. But before we do that, let's have a closer look at the Racingline Mk8 Golf R. Okay guys, well, what do you think of how Racingline's Mk8 Golf R looks? Let me know your first impressions in the comments. When I see a standard Mk8 Golf R, I think it looks okay, but I don't think it looks as good as my Clubsport. Well, this one definitely does look better than my Clubsport, probably looks better than any Golf I've ever seen, thanks to a combination of subtle modifications. What also helps is that it's in pure white, the standard colour for the R, which means the blue highlighting above the headlights and the grille really stands out. You do lose that on Lappy's blue. What also helps is that we've got their lowering springs on the car. They're 25mm lower approximately, which helps the stance no end, as do the R360 wheels. These are 19-inch and they're in a very dark grey, like a gunmetal colour. Behind them we have their stage 3 brake kit. That's a 380mm disc there, up from the standard car's 357. We've also got their stud conversion kit. So normally you attach a Volkswagen wheel with a bolt. With this kit you put the studs on the hub and then you just attach it with nuts, which makes swapping wheels a lot easier. We've got their decal on the side of the car, which helps break up the whites, because ours are body coloured from top to bottom, and like a Clubsport which has a black sill, I think that's actually quite a nice touch. This is a performance pack car, so we've got the big spoiler which looks really cool, just like the one that's standard on the Clubsport. For the geeks out there, this is a DCC car. You can see the plug right there. It's had its rear wiper deleted, and it's got this carbon brace kit which does increase structural rigidity a little bit, obviously not as much as welded in braces, but that's still pretty cool. Next, I think we need to have a look under the bonnet. And this is where my favourite modification resides, because I normally dread having to lift the bonnet while I'm filming. Not on this car. We've got Racingline's bonnet strut on there, telescopic bonnet strut. We've also got the carbon version of the R600 air intake, which makes this cheap looking engine cover look even worse, I think. We've also got some dress up parts, so screen wash cap, coolant cap, oil cap, and only you will appreciate this, their fuel filler cap. You may have noticed down here there is a tuning box sitting on the battery. Well, that's going to be deactivated for the rolling road session, the dyno session, which we will do right now. So without any further ado, let's get these cars on the dyno, starting with my Clubsport. Okay, the car's just about to get strapped down in the dyno cell here at Racingline, and the guy that's going to do the runs is Matt, the technical sales manager. So how does this work? Because I'm not really that familiar with rolling roads.
So what we're going to do is we're going to set the car up for the run to be in 5th gear. So we'll set the RPM ratios in 5th gear on this car, and then what we'll do is find out what the starting speed and the end speed will be. We'll run the car from low RPM, so 1400 RPM up to the red line, which is around 69 to 7,000 RPM on this car. And then what that will do is allow us to see what power the car makes across the full rev range. So we'll see how much torque it will make, where the peak torque will be, where the peak power is, how the car creates power and how it will drop off. And then from there, once we've done the run, we'll do a coast down. So then we'll get accurate figures for both wheel horsepower and crank horsepower of the vehicle.
Okay, how many miles do you think these cars need to cover to produce an accurate figure? Because some people have dynoed the cars with like 500 miles on the clock.
Yes, so we did our Golf R with around 500 miles on the clock after running it in around Bedford as well. These modern engines don't need as much running in as older engines used to, so you could probably take one straight to the forecourt, take it to a dyno and get an accurate power figure straight away, yeah.
Okay, well, we're not going to tell you what that car dynoed, the R dynoed at originally. We'll save that till later when we get the new figure now, because it's done a few more miles now, it's on about 1,500.
Yeah.
So mine's on 6,200, which is hopefully as loose as it's really going to get in the next few years anyway. Okay then, let's get strapping down then and get it run up and see what kind of power my Clubsport produces. Okay, that's the dyno run done. We have the figures over there, which we'll come to shortly. I was watching the plot while you were doing it, and it looked to me like it was below 300, which I was a bit worried about, because the car's 300 metric horsepower, 296 brake horsepower. So just explain to me why it was a bit lower on the plot, but now looking a little bit more optimistic.
Okay, so the way that the dyno works is that it will take the measurement from the wheels. So the rollers will spin, take measurement from the wheels down there, but obviously there will be transmission losses included in that. So what it measures is the actual power it makes at the wheel, and then we do a coast down, which you may have seen. So as soon as we hit the end speed, we put it into neutral, allow the car to coast down. That will calculate the drag of the wheel against the car and the transmission, and then that's what gives us the end figure that you can see on the board. Okay,
that makes a lot of sense then. So you've probably heard that when you dyno a car, you get some power at the crank and power at the wheels, and that's just the difference. So we've got 277 horsepower at the wheels.
Yep.
At the crank, should we go and have a look at the plot?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
So then we have...
Yeah, so 313 horsepower peak and then 421 newton meters of torque, so that's all the crank.
Not bad. It's on Tesco 99 momentum unleaded, so probably the most potent fuel you can get in this country, I think.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So that probably helps. But yeah, that's good. That's not bad. And torque, normally 400 newton meters, it's actually over the standard figure for the R at 420.
Correct, yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting. So it does give the car a bit of potential to beat the power to weight ratio of the R, but to work that out, I think we need to dyno the R now, don't we?
We certainly do, yeah. Let's get on with it.
Okay, the Golf R is strapped down, ready for its dyno run. But before we do that, Matt's going to explain about a couple of non-standard bits under the bonnet and how they're going to affect the power figures.
Okay, so under the bonnet, as you can see, we've got the carbon fibre R600, and we've also got our PCM tuner module there as well. We blanked the PCM tuner module off because this manipulates the sensors in the car to allow it to make more power. The carbon R600 we have left on. We have found that back to back this makes around 4 horsepower more and around 8 newton meters of torque more as well.
How many newton meters?
Sorry, 8.
8?
Yeah, 8 newton meters of torque, yeah. So it makes around that more on a standard car. So we've blanked off the PCM, left the carbon R600 in with a foam filter. Other than that, completely stock underneath.
Okay, so when you see the figures, take that into account, and then we should have a level playing field with the Clubsports. Right, let's get going.
Cool.
Okay, that's the dyno run done for the Mk8 Golf R, and once again we have some very interesting figures which Matt will take us through.
Okay, yeah, so on this dyno run the car made 339 brake horsepower and 444 newton meters of torque. As we discussed before we did the dyno run, it has our carbon R600 on it, so we did say that we were expecting to see 4 brake horsepower and around 8 newton meters of torque. We have gained 6 brake horsepower and 4 newton meters of torque. When we originally dynoed the car, when we first got it, no modification whatsoever, it made 333 brake horsepower and 440 newton meters of torque.
The convenient coincidence there is that both cars have gained 17 brake horsepower, which is, well, I'm surprised because there are variations in the hardware under the bonnet that I thought maybe might create a bigger difference with one car or the other, and also their tolerances, manufacturing tolerances in the cars. But yeah, that's it. And the way that has affected the power to weight ratio is really interesting because the Golf R, using the factory figures of 316 brake horsepower and the Clubsport at 296 brake horsepower, the Golf R had a pretty significant power to weight ratio difference, even though it was heavier. But even though they've gained the same amount of power on the dyno, because the Clubsport is lighter, that extra 17 horsepower means more. So the Golf R is still the champ, both on the dyno, on the road, and power to weight ratio, because it's got a power to weight ratio of 214.7 brake horsepower per tonne, as opposed to 214.23 brake horsepower per tonne, so less than a half a horsepower per tonne difference, which is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, it's minimal.
Yeah.
It's minimal.
So if you see a Clubsport on the road, I wouldn't go drag racing it unless it's wet. Well, actually, from a standing start, that's another. Let's not open that can of worms.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this Volkswizard video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, please do comment, please do share, please do subscribe. Big thanks to Racingline and particularly Matt for their hospitality today, and I'll see you for the next video very soon.